Sally YouTube, how art thou? I hope that you guys are doing really well, heading into 2021 with a bang! As you've probably seen from the title of this video, I have been inspired to make a video about the biggest mistakes that foreigners make when they move to France. Because as many of you know, I am actually a career coach by day. You can check me out over on my other channel at Badass Careers. And quite a few of my clients did actually discover me through Not Even French. And so surprise, surprise, I must have helped probably at least 15 of them last year alone carve out their international career paths over in Europe, and some of them in France specifically. So they have actually inspired this video. I'm putting it out there for everyone, the mistakes you need to avoid when you're moving to France for the first time, because I've got a lot of them booking their flights and traveling there in the next few months, which is super exciting. So I really wanted to make this video on the mistakes that foreigners do make when they're moving to France, or maybe even traveling in France sort of for a longer period of time. I wanted to share those with you so that you can avoid them if you're planning to do that too. Alrighty, so mistake number one is transferring your money over using banks. Please, whatever you do, do not do this. It costs you an arm and a leg really unnecessarily. So when I moved over to France from New Zealand to be a student, I literally had about 1,500 euros to my name. Every dollar was so freaking precious, and the banks wanted to take a big chunk of that cash. Not only this, but in France, the bank fees are very expensive. Well, compared to New Zealand anyway. What I mean by this is that you pay all sorts of fees, monthly fees, like you have to pay monthly fee just to have your account. You pay fees for having cards, like they do add up. And it's a little bit frustrating when the service is questionable, to say the least. But anyways, all this to say is don't transfer money internationally using the banking system. What you want to do is use a company like I used, which was TransferWise. So if you haven't heard of it, TransferWise really is the best way to send, spend, receive money internationally. And there's a reason that there's like 9 million people on the platform using it, because it is actually up to 8 times cheaper than banks and definitely cheaper than PayPal as well. And although I was broke when I moved to France, when I moved back to New Zealand, I had to bring my entire life savings over. So I saved literally thousands of dollars by using TransferWise instead of banks. And so I've actually been in touch with TransferWise because I love them and they've agreed to sponsor this video. So if you click the link in the description below, you will get a free international transfer up to the value of 500 British pounds or your local currency equivalent. And in case you're wondering how it works, essentially you can send money to over 80 countries around the world at the real exchange rate. There's no hidden fees. What you see is what you get when you do the conversion on their website. You can also hold over 50 currencies in your own personal account and convert between them instantly if that's of use for you. It's kind of like having bank accounts all around the world, but just way less hassle. You can also get paid from abroad for free because they've got the local bank details of major currencies, and they even have a MasterCard debit card as well, so that you can spend in the local currency and avoid international conversion fees as well. So again, you can go and grab your free money transfer using the link down below, especially if you're moving abroad. Go and save yourself some dimes. And otherwise, let's jump into the next point of the video, which is all about not having cash and checks on you at all time. And this is especially true when you're going to see the doctor or other medical professional. So something that is quite shocking when you arrive in France as a foreigner is that they still use checks a lot and cash a lot. It's quite a cash-based society in a lot of ways. And this shows up in a few ways. So the first way is if you're going to the doctor, for example, it costs around 25 euros to go to the doctor in France, which is awesome. But I got caught out so many times because I would finish my consultation and go to pay, and the doctor was like, no, we do not accept credit cards. We do not accept FPOS cards, debit cards, whatever. I think in France, having the card machine is incredibly expensive in terms of, you know, what it costs to both lease it and also the charges that they pay on it. And so you'd often have to take cash. So I would have to go down like 6 flights of stairs, find an ATM somewhere, get some cash out. 25 euros is a really awkward amount to try and get out. trot all the way back up the stairs to pay the doctor or the optometrist, whatever. And this shows up in other areas of life in France as well, where you assume that you're going to be able to pay with your card, but you end up needing a check. It often shows up administratively as well. For example, whenever you need to pay for your bond and your deposit for your new apartment that you're renting, all that kind of stuff, just make sure that you sort out the checkbook quickly, make sure that you have cash in hand. And by the way guys, the carte vitale, which is linked to the social security system in France, and it allows you to get that refund whenever you go and see that medical professional or whatever, that can take like 12 months to arrive in the post. So just be prepared to do quite a lot of paperwork until then. It's great prices, you will get your money back, but there's going to be administration and forms and snail mail and all sorts of stuff involved. And speaking of the paperwork, the next point is please do not underestimate the amount of paperwork that you need and the amount of organization that you need to survive in France, especially as a foreigner in France. So you are going to need to have multiple copies of your birth certificate, your parents' birth certificates, yes, if you ever want to go for nationality, for example, or other administrative procedures, passports, diplomas, high school diplomas, university diplomas. You might even need your year 10 swimming certificate for all I know. You need your paperwork and you need to keep everything. I remember Niels got really upset with me one day because I had thrown out all of my bank statements from the past 3 years. I was just like, recycling, don't need those anymore. But you do. He's like, you might need those in 5 years time to buy a house, or when you apply for your retirement, like you may need to provide that. It's not unquestionable in France that that actually could happen. Please don't throw anything out. No originals. They do not get thrown out. So it's a really different system. And what's quite frustrating is that whenever you need to go for a visa or whatever it is, you need to provide a birth certificate that's less than 3 months old. So you've got to keep that in mind as well, that sometimes the paperwork that takes the longest to order, you're like, okay, I'll get started on that really, really early, but it will then expire because it also needs to be issued less than 3 months ago. Now, this is because in France, your birth certificate is more so your life certificate. So on your birth certificate, you have things like any pacts, so civil unions, marriages, divorces, even the birth of your children. It's sort of all in one place. And so what this means is that it's not just like, oh, that's my birth certificate, full stop, it's never going to change. Why do I need a recent up-to-date version of that? It's because something could have happened in your life that you're hiding by not providing a recent copy of that. So there are loads of things like this. You can't just get around it. You have to be on top of it. You have to follow the rules, as stupid as you think it is or as over the top as you think it is. It's just the way it is. Alrighty, so mistake number 4 is stepping on to the pedestrian crossing as soon as the green man appears. Do not do this. You will get killed. I'm speaking about Paris specifically here, but to be honest, in any major city, I didn't really see much of a difference. Cars will run you down. They don't necessarily wait for you. Sometimes they will wait for you and they'll look very, very pissed off about it, like pissed off about the road rules, and they'll look frustrated that they're waiting for you, but they're like, and the motorbikes as well, like raving up, and you're like, and they just like zoom past you. But yeah, make sure you look both ways at all times, whether it's a green light or just a standard pedestrian crossing. And by the way, on the pedestrian crossings, the cars will just go. They will go, and like pedestrian crossings are, what are they there for in France? Let me think. Not much. They're there to have some stripy lines on the road where pedestrians cross when there's no cars whatsoever anyway. It's not the same concept in New Zealand, where if you're waiting at a pedestrian crossing, the cars will slow down for you. Even when they think that you might be coming up to the crossing, they'll slow down and wait, see what you do, and you cross safely. I thought that was the concept of a pedestrian crossing, but then I went to France. All of this to say, don't expect the drivers to stick to the rules, red lights, green lights, I don't know, pedestrian crossings, any of that. Just be safe on the roads. Okay, so mistake number 5 is not being mindful of your neighbors. And this is especially true in Paris, but basically in any larger apartment building with like creaky wooden floors and stuff like that. So you're not gonna wanna put your washing machine on at night, walking around too heavily at night, moving furniture at night, anything like that that could be seen as disrespectful, because you'll hear about it. Definitely. The French are not afraid to come knocking on your door and speak their mind, and you don't want to piss them off. And you want to have friendly relationships, of course, with your neighbors. You never know when you might need them. So just remember that the walls, especially in the capital city, can be paper thin and you hear everything. Everything. Mistake number 6 is putting off doing your grocery shop and your errands and all that kind of stuff to Sundays, because a lot of things are closed on Sundays. So In the central cities, some grocery stores might open until like midday or something like that, but effectively don't count on it being a big errands day, especially in smaller cities and towns. Like, most things will be completely closed, so just take your Sundays to enjoy. You're gonna have to smash out most of those errands on Saturday. So mistake number 7 is to confuse debating with arguing. So there were times in the office working in France where I thought that World War III had broken out. Like, there were raised voices, there were banging on tables, it was very heated, and this could be over like the order of PowerPoint slides in a PowerPoint presentation, you know. It can be quite fiery, let alone if you have a manager that's actually going off at you because you've made a mistake or done something wrong. Like, I've seen some heat in the French workplace, but also between friends, over the dinner table, family, that kind of thing as well. But there is a difference between debating and arguing. So debating is the way that the idea, not the person, gets pulled apart, examined, critiqued, looked at from a new perspective, all of that kind of stuff. And they can have a full-on debate, completely not agree, raised voices, la 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 la, and then go off happy as Larry to lunch together. So when you move to France, there definitely is an observation exercise there around what's really going on in the room, and not to sort of back down or shy away or be scared or be like, I'm not getting into this argument. Actually, you might want to get involved, because professionally as well, it shows that you've got something to say. So that's a bit of a mindset shift that you're going to have to take with you if you move into France. Mistake number 8 is quite similar to the point that I made in point number 2, but essentially don't think that you can pay for small goods like your baguette at a bakery, for example, with your card. Boop, just pay wave and it's done. Again, there are often limits like no carte bancaire below €5 or €10 and that kind of stuff. So that kind of pay on the go for small goods like coffees or the baguette or like whatever it is, isn't really as much of a thing. Again, having coins and cash on you. I have heard, however, that it's becoming more of a thing during COVID, but that doesn't mean that you won't sort of pay fees or have to at least, you know, meet a minimum amount as well. I also remember when I was living there, not only do you have minimums in the shops, but you actually have maximums enforced by your bank with PayWave. And honestly, it could be like 20, 30 euros. It's really, really low because they're not really trusting, right? Like the whole thing is, oh, but what if someone takes your card, runs around, goes crazy, pay waving everywhere, and obviously you get into a lot of merde. So I do understand from one perspective, but yeah, it's very limited pay wave and that sort of paying on the go for small things culture. So mistake number 9 is not greeting everyone individually at a party or an event. So I mean, I know that there's a lot of lockdowns and there's not many party or events happening in France at the moment or elsewhere in Europe. However, life is gonna get back to normal, right guys? And things are gonna pick back up. So when you're going to events and gatherings and that kind of stuff, so yes, you have to greet everyone. And you also have to say goodbye to everyone, otherwise it's a bit rude. And this is something that I really didn't like because I'm really introverted. Like if I wanted to slip away, I just want to say, hey, thanks to the host and just like walk out quietly, discreetly, not really being noticed, right? I'm just like, you know, don't really want to do the whole thing, but you gotta do the whole thing. So you say hello to everyone, salut, bisous, like salut, enchanté, Rosie, salut, Rosie, like introducing yourself to everyone in the room, and then you do the same rounds when you leave as well. It can be pretty intense, especially as new people enter the room and leave the room, like it's a lot. But yeah, if you do try to avoid that and just slip away quietly or just like awkwardly walk in and say hi to people and just like acknowledge the host only, it can be seen as really rude. Mistake number 10 is not managing your meal times and thinking that you can go and pick up something to eat in a restaurant, for example, between like 2 and 6 p.m, for example, because you're starving, because you missed lunch and you're running late in your day and that kind of thing. France doesn't really work like that. Everyone eats at the same time. It's like this magical rhythmic culture around food. It's absolutely incredible. But what that means is that the assumption is that no one's going to be sitting down and eating a meal at a restaurant is like between 2 and 6. Like that would never happen, you know? And so kitchens stop serving, restaurants stop serving. So you just have to keep in mind that restaurants aren't doing the service non-stop thing, and don't let yourself get caught out, because I definitely have multiple times. However, in Paris, we are saved by the French bakeries that are open all day long usually, and you can always pop in and get like a pain au chocolat or something if you really need to. And the 11th and final mistake is getting upset about making mistakes. You are in a new country, a new culture, probably a new language. You're going to make so many mistakes. Linguistic mistakes, cultural faux pas, all sorts of stuff. It's going to happen. It's part of the ride. It's part of the journey. So you can't let it upset you, because it's going to happen. And the French also culturally, they don't mind scolding. So there's a bit of a thing in the French culture, which is, they call it like lesson giving, you know, donneur de leçon. And it's really like they're schooling you. Like think about the French language, il faut, tu dois, like there's a lot of like you should, right? And there's a lot of telling you how you should live, how you should do things. You should eat like this, you should live like this, you should look after your health like this, you should work like this, like you should holiday like this. You know, there's a lot of opinions in France, and French people don't usually hold back on telling you what they think and just giving their unsolicited opinions as well. So that, combined with them being unafraid to scold you or tell you off, or yeah, kind of bring something to your attention, it's almost kind of paternalistic in a way. There's almost like adults won't be afraid to tell other adults if they think they're being naughty kind of thing. Like those two things combined means that not only will you make mistakes, but you might hear about them too. Don't let it get you down. It is a normal part of life in France. And although it can kind of feel like you're being parented sometimes, it is one of those things that you just sort of need to learn to live with it and move on and enjoy all the other positives of living in France instead. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I would love to hear from you if you've moved to France. What mistakes did you make, or what mistakes would you recommend foreigners avoid when they're moving to France themselves? I'd love to hear from you down below in the comment section, especially if you've moved to France. What mistakes did you make when you made to France, or what mistakes do you see other people making as well? And otherwise, I'll see you guys here next week on the Not Even French channel. A bientôt!